The Audi Q5 is a luxury SUV, but can the same be said for the Mazda CX-60? In this test, we're going to compare how they look, how they feel, even how they smell, and we want to find out which one drives better and whether Mazda's recent upmarket push is a genuine threat to the Germans. It's going to be a tantalizing comparison, so let's get into it. The Audi Q5 has been one of the German luxury brand's best sellers since it was first introduced in 2009 and comes in lots of different flavours, including the spicy SQ5. We're testing the mid-spec Audi Q5 45 TFSI Sport and have lined up one of the top-spec Mazda CX-60 variants, the G40e Azami. Both mid-size SUVs have 5 doors, 5 seats, are all-wheel drive, feature turbo-petrol engines with mild hybrid bits, have automatic transmissions, and are designed to make you feel just a bit special. The Audi is a known quantity, but the Mazda, well, it's a new kid on the block. Question is, does it even deserve to hang out in the same suburb? The Audi is a bit smaller overall and not as powerful, but it has one thing the Mazda cannot match: badge value. The provenance of those 4 rings count for a lot in the luxury car segment. Although it should be noted, this Q5 is built in Mexico, not Germany, while the CX-60 is manufactured in Japan. Okay, let's look at price. No surprises, the Audi is more expensive. And while the Mazda is significantly cheaper, it's one of the most expensive mid-size SUVs the mainstream Japanese car maker has ever built. So, in other words, it's expensive for a Mazda. Ownership costs are almost identical, which suggests either Audi has lifted its game or Mazda needs to do better, given that European luxury brands traditionally cost more and deliver less when it comes to maintenance and after-sales support. The Audi may be getting long in the tooth with a replacement waiting in the wings, but it still has plenty of presence thanks to its striking front-end design, with fancy LED headlight clusters flanking an oversized single-frame grille. It has attractive proportions, and although the optional 20-inch Audi Sport wheels are nice, are they worth an extra $1,300? Probably not in my book. But the $1,300 black pack is a nice touch, and at the rear the LED brake lights are pretty spiffy, as is the roof spoiler, and it all comes together nicely with the Mythos black metallic paint, which adds another $1,990 to the price. The CX-60, meanwhile, is finished in this eye-catching Sol Red crystal paint, which is a $995 option and features a more demure front end with its smaller headlight clusters and more restrained grille design. Overall, I prefer the Mazda's silhouette, and the design has grown on me, and I especially like that long snout, which gives it an imposing aesthetic. It also gets 20-inch alloy wheels, but they're fitted as standard on the Mazda. And again, both of these 20-inch wheels kind of look a bit forgettable when they're stationary, but the optics improve dramatically once they're moving. The Audi is motivated by a tried and tested 2-litre turbo-petrol engine with a small 12-volt mild hybrid system to help reduce fuel consumption. And the whole kit and caboodle generates a reasonably healthy amount of thrust for a combustion engine of this size. The engine drives all 4 wheels, pumping through a slick shifting 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission, which Audi insists is good enough to propel this vehicle from 0 to 100 in just over 6 seconds. That's pretty quick. The Mazda has a bigger inline 6-cylinder turbo-petrol engine that develops more power and more torque, so it should be faster, right? Well, according to Mazda, it's actually half a second slower from 0 to 100 than the Audi. This seems logical given the Mazda is about 100 kilograms heavier, and it's got an 8-speed single clutch automatic transmission as opposed to the 7-speed dual clutch in the Audi, but it is all-wheel drive like the Audi. The Mazda also has a more sophisticated 48-volt mild hybrid system to help reduce fuel consumption, but we'll soon find out which is more efficient and also which is faster. The Audi Q5 is getting old, but it still presents well and is easy to familiarize yourself with. It's also easy to live with thanks to really good ergonomics, except for one thing. We'll get to that in a jiffy. A new third generation Audi Q5 has already been revealed and is due in 2025, or more likely 2026, given how long Audi products take to arrive in Australia. But overall, this still feels like a premium SUV. For starters, the heated and power-operated front seats look great. They have supportive cushions and a form-fitting shape with sporty bolsters. The leather-appointed upholstery is average though, with a coarse grain and a plasticky feel. 8-way power adjustment for the front seats are included, and you get 4-way lumbar adjust up, down, forward and back. That's nice. Plus, there's this little under thigh adjustment here, which gives you a bit of extra support under here if you've got long legs, all of which makes finding a comfy seating position a lot easier. Unlike the seats, the steering wheel has a much higher quality leather finish, as does the gorgeous gear shifter. Despite the drab grey tones, overall material quality is pretty good throughout the cabin, and you really have to dig to find abrasive plastics. The physical climate controls are totally Sigma, according to my 13-year-old daughter, because you've got this cool haptic response when you touch your finger on them that gives you more details as to what they're going to do. Plus, everything has a beautiful feel to it, and these buttons can be pushed up or down, super intuitive, and best of all, there's no touchscreen tomfoolery. You get a non-branded 10-speaker stereo, which is actually very impressive and delivers remarkably earthy and rich audio, while the panoramic glass sunroof is another nice touch, adding light to the muted colour palette in the cabin. Storage solutions, well, they're a bit weak sauce. You've got 2 small spring-loaded cup holders here and a very cool wireless charge mat here for your phone, but if you want to slake your thirst while charging your phone, it's a little bit difficult to access it. They didn't really think that one through. And access to this very small central bin is also kind of impossible when you push that back. You do have a USB-C port there, USB-A here, plus 12-volt socket, and a rather small useless storage cubby here as well. There's a few extra little storage cubbies I should mention. Most of them are not great. This one, for instance, it takes up all this room. It's tiny. You can put your keys in there, a couple other things. I reckon this is a vestigial artifact from a previous model, and I reckon it used to be an ashtray. It's kind of like the human coccyx. It's a vestigial bone that is no longer used. Anyway, there's another bit here. You can put a pen in it, you put your phone in it. Yeah, I don't know, it feels like wasted space, but the best bit are the door pockets. They are huge. The Mega Gulp fits in so easily with room to spare, and they're huge. I love them. They are good. The Audi Virtual Cockpit is the original and still one of the best digital driver's displays. This 12.3-inch jobby offering a wealth of information and customizability, including an excellent extended map view, all of which is easy to access thanks to the intuitive steering wheel controls. The central 10.1-inch digital screen isn't as big as some of the units you get in more modern luxury SUVs, but the native operating system is classy and intuitive. I really like it. And visual clarity, excellent too. Touch response and refresh rates are good, and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto work well on the screen, displayed in a very high resolution. The inbuilt GPS satellite navigation looks a bit old, but once it gets going, it works pretty well and is a good second choice if you're not using smartphone mirroring. Plus, the bonus that it's reproduced on the driver's display is pretty handy. But the reversing camera system feels a little outmoded. There's no 3D setting, although there are plenty of camera angles on offer, and the 360-degree overhead view can be enlarged for the central section. And for those who hate parking with a passion, it also has a self-parking system. Okay, the Mazda CX-60, and first impressions are fairly positive, except for this door card here and this ocean of plastic doing their best impressions of aluminium flywire. Although that said, they are better than the piano black glossy finish that Mazda has been rather fond of because it doesn't leave all those greasy fingerprints. And look, overall, it does feel like a fairly premium cabin. It feels like a premium SUV. It's a bit wider and roomier than the Audi, and the same goes for the seats. While they aren't as form-fitting and the bolster's not as body-hugging as the Audi, the leather quality is better with a smoother, more supple grain. Both driver and passenger get the 8-way power adjustable seats just like its German rival, but it only gets 2-way lumbar adjust forward and backwards, unlike 4-way in the Audi. However, the Mazda does add cooled seats on top of heated seats, one-upping the Mazda, and it gets a heated steering wheel as well. There's also leather-like materials covering more of the cabin, including the dashboard, transmission tunnel and door inserts. But there are a few more cheaper plastic panels present than in the Audi. The leather steering wheel is power operated, unlike the Audi's manual adjust, although the gear shifter doesn't feel half as solid. The climate controls aren't nearly as swanky as in the Audi, but they still have good tactility and they're sensibly laid out, meaning you can access them and tweak them at a glance. There's a 12-speaker Bose stereo, which is better quality, and it's got very, very good audio fidelity. Plus, there's a moonroof as well, but it's not quite as big as in the Audi, and the opening section isn't quite as large either. Storage solutions are both better and worse than the Audi because here you have sunglasses holder, which you don't get in the other vehicle, and the cup holders don't intervene with the wireless phone charger, which is nice. However, the spring-loaded cup holders barely fit that bottle, which is a little annoying. But you've got this lovely butterfly opening storage box here. However, the actual storage area is quite shallow and not very useful, but you do get 2 USB-C ports. There's also door pockets here, but they don't fit the Mega Gulp. That kind of sucks, but they do fit the regular bottle. Only just. Might need to get some new bottles. The CX-60 features a large 12.3-inch digital driver's display that looks great, but doesn't have the same level of customizability or ease of use as the Audi. It does have a head-up display, which is excellent, and the steering wheel controls are almost as intuitive as in the Audi. The 10.25-inch central touchscreen has similar digital real estate to the Audi, but the widescreen design gives it a more modern look, and the menu structure and native operating system are very good. But when I say touchscreen, I mean only when Mazda permits. So while Apple CarPlay and Android Auto let you use touch input stationary or while moving, when you go to the native operating system, touchscreen does not work. So you've got to use this rotator dial down here. Mazda has included what it calls an automatic driving position guide that basically uses a little camera here to detect where your eyes are, and it asks you a few questions, how tall you are, that sort of stuff, to automatically position the steering wheel, the seat, the mirrors, and the head-up display. Now, I've tweaked my seating position to be a bit uncomfortable and not very good. I'm going to test it out. So we'll enter my height. Oh, here we go. Steering wheel. Oh, hey, oi. Here we go. All right, well, okay. Not bad, not bad. I personally like to sit a little bit closer to the steering wheel. I like the wrists hanging over the edge, but all things considered, that's not too shabby. It uses facial recognition to automatically adjust driver preferences, storing up to 6 different users. The GPS sat-nav looks and feels a bit newer than the Audi's setup, but it's not displayed on the instrument cluster, and if you're not using voice commands, it can be tricky to input your destination. The reversing camera offers better visual acuity, and again, there's several different views and a reasonable 360-degree overhead camera system, but no 3D pinch and drag option. Even though the Audi's leather quality is inferior, I prefer the Q5's interior fit out overall. It feels a bit fancier and is better at stroking the ego, where the Mazda is still sort of figuring out where it belongs. When it comes to safety, the Audi's 5-star ANCAP rating from 2017 expired in late 2023, meaning it's currently unrated, and will probably stay that way until the new 3rd generation Q5 arrives in 2026 or so. It gets 8 airbags versus the Mazda's 10 and doesn't have quite as many advanced safety features as the Mazda either. The Mazda, meanwhile, has a 5-star ANCAP safety rating that expires in 2028. Another thing I've noticed in the Audi is that it smells better. The smell of success, perhaps? Anyway, the seats back here are pretty good. There's a little bit of contouring so you can get nice and comfortable in the back seats. The headrests aren't too bad. Adjustable, of course, but because of that moonroof, headroom is pretty tight for my 183 centimeter frame. That's about 6 foot. But legroom is actually pretty reasonable when you consider that's my front seating position and I can stick my feet right under the seat there, and overall it's pretty comfortable. However, if you've got 3 people in here, have a look how big this partition is. This is the transmission tunnel and it eats into a lot of legroom. So if you've got 3 people across here, your legs are encroaching into their seats and it's going to start fights, especially if you've got kids. Yeah. Amenity is pretty good, and although you only get old school USB-A ports back here with some useful advice, backseat climate control and twin air vents are welcome, as are touch operated reading lights, grab handles, and I love the old school coat hanger ports and extra hooks here. There's also seat back pockets, door pockets, a 12-volt socket, an armrest with sturdy spring-loaded cup holders, and the usual child seat anchorages, 2 ISOFIX and 3 top tethers. So in the back of the Mazda, and it feels a little bit roomier, and it should do because it's 16 centimeters longer, 4 centimeters wider. Comfort levels are pretty similar. The leather quality is a bit better, that's nice. And in terms of overall space, I've got a bit more knee room here, despite the driver's seat being in my driving position. And I can still get my feet under the seats. There's a bit of contouring in the back, but headroom, it's tighter than in the Audi, which is a bit of a surprise. Yes, it's got a moonroof there, but I tell you what, if I go over a bump, my head is going to get slammed. One thing I do like is the bulkhead down here is not massive like in the Audi. I know they've both got prop shafts, but this one seems better, and it's going to work better with 3 abreast in the back here. Backseat amenity is a little bit better in this Japanese car than its German competitor, starting with heated outboard rear seats. You've got the air vents, but you don't get to adjust temperature. However, you do get twin USB-C ports for faster device charging and a very handy 150 watt, 220 volt household power point. That's cool. You've also got seat back pockets, grab handles, LED lights, but not as many options to hang your business shirts, just the one. Pop the powered tailgate on the Audi and it reveals a fairly large boot space, especially for a mid-size SUV. This is big, it's wide, it's deep, and amenity is actually quite good as well. First, you've got these really good LED strip lights on both sides, which provide excellent illumination in the boot space at night. There's some pockets on the sides here with little elastic straps. In one, you've got the high-vis vest and the cargo net. That's good. Plus, there's a little 12-volt socket hidden back here as well. On the other side, you've got a medical kit, a first aid kit, plus the usual suspects, 4 tie-down anchorage points, and 2 of these really handy bag hooks. These are some of the best I've used. And then you've got the fold-down seat latches. Always good to have those in there with the 60/40 split fold seats, and the world's worst spare tire. This is a space saver spare tire that needs to be inflated with a compressor, but hey, better than no space saver spare tire at all. The CX-60 also has a power operated tailgate and reveals a pretty reasonably sized boot. It doesn't look as big as the Q5, and after measuring it, turns out it's not. Although it is 5 centimeters wider, it's not as deep and it doesn't sit as low. And so it makes sense that that vehicle has more cubic literage overall. And in terms of amenity, the Mazda doesn't do quite as good either. It doesn't have those things the Germans love, like the Medi-Kit and the high-vis vest. But what you do get is the 4 tie-down points. You've got a little pocket here with the elastic cladding, plus a 12-volt socket there, and that's about it really. The LED light is a bit average. The fold-down seat latches are better though, because you can individually fold down the central section. Oh, and one more thing, it does come with a pre-inflated space saver spare tyre. It's not bad. Well, so far it's been a pretty close race and the Mazda has acquitted itself well. It feels pretty nice, but for me, the Audi still has the more premium feel. Will this continue on the road? Cue the driving music. First impression of the Audi, and well, it's very smooth and very quiet. It's German engineering for you. And despite that small capacity engine, it drives effortlessly, just like a luxury car should. The powertrain doesn't have a lot of character per se, but the petrol engine is effective and deceptively swift. The four-cylinder engine could be accused of being a bit clinical, or put another way, a bit boring, but it has virtually no turbo lag, which is a good thing. It's quite responsive in the most part and energetic and feels like it's always ready to go. While the power delivery is appreciably linear, the gearbox has a few low-speed foibles, especially when engaging first gear or reverse. However, ride comfort is more than acceptable despite sitting on the firmer side of the fence. Bigger hits are felt, but for the most part, the suspension smooths out rougher roads with sophistication. In other words, you'll feel the road underneath you, but it won't annoy you. It's a relaxed freeway cruiser, and the lane keep assist system or automatic steering is really well calibrated, so you can just let it do its own thing and get buried in conversation. Then throw on the adaptive cruise control as well, and you are laughing. Around town and in the burbs, it's easy to get along with and is as happy as Larry making last-minute turns and navigating roundabouts. That said, the throttle calibration can feel a little lax. It's almost like there's a momentary delay at times, as the throttle and especially the gearbox play catch-up. But at full throttle, the gearbox is actually very tidy and quick shifting, and it feels like it was designed more for performance than slower speed duties. Also, it's rather engaging when you find a twisting, turning road, and that's because the steering has a little bit of feel to it. Like a lot of Volkswagen Group steering setups, it's light, but there's a bit of substance there, and together with the excellent suspension setup, it really does get you involved in the drive. Plus, it doesn't wallow through corners. There's not a lot of body roll. It doesn't lean and list when you push it through corners. The overall suspension setup is very, very nice. Refinement levels are not class leading, but the cabin is certainly hushed at cruising speeds, and the only time you'll really hear any mechanical sounds are when you're revving the engine hard or hitting a ragged pothole. Okay, Mazda time, and right away, it doesn't feel as smooth or as quiet as the Audi, but it does feel solid. It feels well built, robust, and this adds a sense of quality in the way it comports. It's no tin can, let's put it that way. Throttle response in the Mazda is more eager than the Audi, and as a result, motivates a little more smoothly from standstill. But it also feels heavier and needs more throttle to really get a move on. But that six-cylinder powertrain is without doubt the highlight of the Mazda's mechanical package. It delivers the sort of sonorous soundtrack the Audi just cannot match. It's also got a much meatier mid-range and more torque, and you really feel it. You feel that extra muscularity in the way it motivates, and we have tested them head to head, and yes, the Audi is quicker, but not by as much as the facts and figures on paper would suggest. It's about half a second quicker on paper, but in reality, this thing is only just behind it in terms of acceleration. The recalibrated 8-speed auto is better than early versions of this vehicle, but still throws in the odd abrupt shift, especially at lower speeds. It doesn't have the consistent hesitation you find in the Audi when shifting into reverse or drive, but at the same time, it's not quite as refined or quick shifting as the Audis either. The powertrain does a good job at pedestrian speeds, and the CX-60 is a savvy urban explorer, but the suspension is a bit firmer than the Audi, and it doesn't have the body control over speed bumps like that, and it sort of jounces you around a bit more and takes a bit longer to settle. The heavier steering feel, added vehicle weight and extra width make it slightly less nimble around town. It just feels a bit more cumbersome. Big hits and potholes are more noticeable in the Mazda, and during dynamic testing it leans and wallows through the corners a little bit more. On longer sweeping corners the Mazda fares a lot better than on shorter, sharper corners, and that's because the suspension has a little bit more time to settle, and that allows the car to track a bit more keenly through the bends. That said, if there are like undulations or mid-corner bumps, it flusters the rear suspension. It just feels out of sorts, and I reckon this is something that Mazda needs to address. Refinement levels are fairly impressive, with similarly low levels of tyre and wind noise compared to the Audi, and although the engine is a little louder than its German rival, it's never harsh. In fact, I'd call it charming, not jarring. Visibility is slightly worse in the Mazda, but neither have massive blind spots, and both have good blind spot detection systems anyway. The Mazda's adaptive cruise control is very good, just fire and forget, although the lane keeping system or automatic steering isn't quite as subtle or progressive as in the Audi. But look, it's still a good highway companion, although I will say that at times you do notice that firmer ride comfort here and there. But in terms of fuel efficiency, the Audi comes off second best, and it was no surprise to see the Mazda deliver lower real-world fuel consumption figures. This is partly due to its smarter hybrid tech that will turn off the engine and coast under light loads more frequently. Overall, the Audi is a more resolved SUV to drive. Yes, there's some gearbox and throttle response quibbles, but by and large, it's the better and more competent drive in pretty much all scenarios. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot to like about this CX-60, chief among them that endearing inline 6-cylinder turbo-petrol engine. But the Audi, it's just more polished. Mazda has put up a commendable fight here, and if you're not tied to a European badge, the value equation is pretty good. The Mazda is cheaper to buy and run, given it consumes less fuel per kilometre, and it certainly feels like a step above traditional Mazda product as well. However, for a lot of buyers looking for a premium midsize SUV in the 80 or 90 grand price bracket, the Mazda won't even be on their radar, simply because badge cachet is king. Ultimately, having a luxury branded car parked in the driveway trumps everything. Nevertheless, the Audi Q5 is still a more sophisticated and better engineered vehicle, even if it is a lot older and more expensive. Mazda is definitely on the right track, and the philosophy behind the CX-60 has merit, and with a little bit more refinement, it could be a genuine Euro fighter. However, even with the significant price difference, the Audi is simply a better product overall and wins this battle. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked the video. Don't forget to subscribe and like and leave a comment. Do you reckon Mazda is ready to take the next step? See you soon.